Thank you for not only agreeing to meet with us today, but also to be part of this special Martha Schlamme Centennial birthday celebration with a whole bunch of folks. And I just wanted to start off by, saying this, you are a lawyer and you are a cultural worker. So tell us a little bit about yourself and the intersection of those two sets and how that relates to your involvement with Martha Schlamme.
Well, all right. I'm a labor lawyer. I represent unions and employees. I never represent management. Before I became a lawyer, I made my living for a few years as a folk singer. Among the groups that used to retain me were labor unions because I'm a singer, I guess, most styled after Pete Seeger, if I had to name a single influence. Sure. And he always had all those songs in my repertoire. So I didn't do much singing while I first became a lawyer for the first couple of years because I was so busy learning how to be a lawyer, and it's very hard, actually, to do it well. But then I started going out to the demonstrations that various unions that we were involved in were doing and that we were supporting, such as the Eastern Airlines strike quite a few years ago and other strikes in New Jersey. And I would sing Solidarity Forever and some of the other labor songs. And I noticed that there were a number of other regulars at demonstrations who knew the songs and started singing with me. Our group is actually part of the New Jersey Industrial Union Council, which is the CIO, which never entirely merged into the AFL-CIO in New Jersey for various reasons. And we're what's left of the CIO. About 28 years ago, there were a whole bunch of strikes in Decatur, Illinois, from Staley and Caterpillar and some other companies. And the IUC organized the Solidarity bus tour in New Jersey to visit the local, I think Goodyear Tires was one of the companies. We visited local branches of all the companies that were on strike to set up a picket line in front of them for about an hour or so. And we visited 3 or 4 locations. And by that time, a lot of these people knew I sang. I had brought my guitar along, and we actually had a songbook that one of us got. Actually, Carol Gay, who's now the president of the IUC, she had picked up a songbook from the Labor Heritage Foundation, which had published, it was the Christmas season, and they published a whole bunch of parody songs to Christmas carols on the themes of the strike. So we passed the book out to the people on the bus. While we were traveling between the sites, I kind of went over the songs with them in the bus. And then we'd get out and we'd sing the songs in connection with these picket lines that we were putting up in front of the places. Everybody had a terrific time. And we decided that we ought to try and institutionalize it a bit. So we sent out a call for people who wanted to join us. And we still are a committee of the New Jersey State Industrial Union Council. And we've been very successful. We've been going, I don't know, we either have finished 28 years or we're in the beginning of our 28th year. We've been going a very long time. So my being a labor lawyer connected easily with starting to do this sort of work, because people I was already representing knew me, so they trusted me to get on a platform and not just do an egotistical thing, but sing songs that would support the movement. And it grew from there. So that's how the two connect. They're both part of what I consider my lifelong commitment to try and work for progressive causes as much as I can.
That totally resonates with me, and I know it resonates with lots of other folks who basically have the work that we do to survive, pay the bills, but also that we might happen to like as well, like teaching or representing folks in court, etc. And the cultural side, where we definitely want to express our thoughts in the most creative way possible. So, what's your connection with Martha Schlamme, and why? How does her existence and her work intersect with what you've been doing in your life?
Well, I've listened to Martha Schlamme records since I was, I don't know, junior high school. I came across her. I was a folk singer, and she was among the people I listened to. But I really came to this show because we've worked with Leonard and Helene many times over the years. Uh, Leonard became aware of us, and he approached us originally to help him out and play the role of a labor chorus in a Mark Blitzstein radio drama that he was putting on. I think it may have been staged at the People's Voice Cafe. So he sang with them. As you may know, Leonard has a very long career of left wing, maybe even you could call it communist leaning music in the
Please let me
intersection with
unmute and come
the
on.
classical field. He's an expert in Blitzstein. He's an expert in all the history of left music, and especially classical music, but also, folk music and those sorts of things. So we worked with Leonard on that and on something for the he wrote an opera about the Triangle Fire. We worked with him on that. We've done by now, I think this is the fourth program we've been doing with Leonard over the years. So when he started to put this one together, he wanted a chorus, and he approached us, and I was very excited because I knew Martha Schlamme's work, and I've always enjoyed working with Leonard, and we became a part of the program.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And from your personal standpoint, did you have any favorite Martha Schlamme songs that particularly resonated with you, or that you use with the chorus?
Well, Leonard picked out the program, but Zugnik Kainmal had been something that I'd worked on with the chorus in the past, and Die Gedanken sind frei was one that we had done a little work on in the past. So some of the songs were already in our repertoire when he came, and Dona Dona, which is one of the songs we're going to be helping Bell sing, or maybe that's been cut from the People's Voice program. I'm not sure, but that's been one of the songs on this program that obviously a lot of us knew because it was very popular when Joan Baez made the recording. Most of our choruses in my generation, unfortunately, I wish we had more younger people. And anyone who sees this who's interested, please get in touch with me. We're always looking for people. We don't have tryouts. Just come and sing with us. If you're enthusiastic and you're willing to learn the words and sing the words in unison with us, you're going to fit.
So don't be afraid to engage in shameless promotion. What is the website or email address that your chorus uses?
Well, solidaritysingers.org, all one word, or they can contact me by email, bzarofsky@zarofskylaw.com.
Great. And I'll make sure that appears on the screen as well. But, if we're trying to reach out to different generations, we've got to have that website and that email address.
Well, hopefully if we had some different generations, we might be able to do some songs that are more in line with some of the current pop music. Our repertoire favors things like song parodies of things that are from earlier generations. And of course, the old songs going back to Joe Hill.
Sure, of course.
We have a repertoire that spans over 125 years, I think, at this point.
Great. So at this time, I'm going to ask Leonard Lerman and Helene Spearman to unmute their microphones and come on in with your videos.
Okay, I'm Leonard Lerman, and you were just talking with Bennett Zarofsky, with whom we've been working since 2004. In 2005, we put together this album for Mark Blitzstein's Centennial, which was one of the inspirations to do Martha Schlamme Centennial this year. And on the back of this, there's a picture that you can probably see more or less that has the chorus, and there are quite a few members of the Solidarity Singers in that. I'll just read the names: Tom Carlson, and Diane Beanie, Bennett Zarofsky, Carol Gay, Gene Romstead. Gene is no longer with us, but the others are still around, and I'm hoping that they'll be with us. There were actually 8 women and Bennett who sang with us at the Puffin Cultural Forum when we did this a preview for this program in Teaneck on March 25th, and that's actually on YouTube, where people can watch that as a preview for the program that's coming up on September 23rd. Now, you asked who I am.
Yes.
I'm a composer and conductor, translator. I believe I'm the most prolific living composer on Long Island. My teacher, Elie Siegmeister, was the most prolific composer in Long Island's history, and he was a friend of Martha Schlamme. He spoke at her funeral. I first heard Martha in 1961. She was at Town Hall, this album that she made in 1962, and I was blown away by her. And 20 years later, Jewish Currents published an article of mine about my opera Hannah, an anti-war feminist opera that was done in Heidelberg, Germany, at a U.S. military theater. And Martha was intrigued by it, and she called up my parents' house. I would happen to be visiting, and she said, "This is Martha Schlamme. May I speak with Leonard Lehrman?" And I got on the phone. I said, "Martha Schlamme, you were one of my icons." I proceeded to tell her everything about her concert from 20 years ago, even more than she remembered, and she was blown away. And we became instant friends. And I said, I'm in town because I was working in Basel at the time, but I'm in New York because a musical of mine is being done at Glassboro State College in New Jersey. Would you like to come? And she said, yes. And I took her, I drove her there, had 5 hours in the car with her. And that was, the experience that I had with Martha, talking about everything under the sun, and interesting her in work that I had done on Brecht and Eisler. She was now there were basically 4 important areas of Martha's work that we're exploring in this concert. There was the Yiddish Jewish background, and then there was the German Brecht, Eisler, Brecht and Weil and Tucholsky Weimar era German culture, a lot of satire and bitterness. And then there was the Brecht, the Bernstein-Blitzstein connection. That was actually my connection, because I've been an expert on Mark Blitzstein. Leonard Bernstein called me Mark Blitzstein's Dybbuk, and Martha called me in to be a consultant on a program that she was doing with Alvin Epstein called. It was originally called Bernstein Blitzstein. Epstein and Schlamme, and Martha said, "Why am I last? I should be first." So they changed it to Schlamme and Epstein sing Bernstein and Blitzstein. It was known as the Bern Blitz for short, and they did it up at Harvard, and they did it in New York. I was, as I say, called into as a consultant to recommend some songs of Blitzstein that were going to be on the program. So those were my major connections with Martha. Now, Helene and I have been together since 1987. We just performed our 700th did our 700th performance together. We've done concerts and operas and musicals, and it was on my birthday, August 20th, and that concert was also dedicated in part to Martha, and is also on YouTube. And Helene actually didn't have the close connection that I had with Martha that Belle did, or that I had, but she did meet with her. She did hear her perform, and she went backstage to talk with her. And Helene, why don't you just introduce yourself, tell them about Bronx Opera, and then tell them about your encounter with Martha.
There's a lot to tell. And I changed my name on the slate here to Helene Williams, which is the name I sing under. It was the name I was born with. It was not the name my father was born with, but that's another story. And I attended City College, and so I got a very strong dose of political issues and raised fists and everything like that. And that I was not born into being an Upper West Side. I see Republican. Excuse me. Figured out what life is really about. And so, okay, so I ended up meeting Leonard when I auditioned for the lead role of Emma Goldman in a piece he had written and was producing. And I realized that part of me was very much like Emma Goldman's ideas of freedom and autonomy.
We brought out her
So
inner anarchism. And we also joined, I want to say we joined
yes,
the Solidarity Singers. You see this, the shirt I'm wearing? I'm surprised that Bennett isn't wearing one, but he has them for people that join the group. Right, Bennett? And Bennett has to go in 2 minutes. You want to unmute and say a final word? Bennett, can
Yes,
you unmute?
please, Bennett.
Yes, I was just waiting for Chris to give me the sign.
You got it.
Mute. Well, yes, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to speak with you this morning. We greatly enjoyed the program we did at the Puffin Center this spring. Leonard mentioned how we're a female-heavy group. That is true, but we also have men. But we're never quite sure who's going to show up. We're a very loosely structured group. It's whoever can make it to the gigs comes, and we do okay.
Great. Well, I
looking
wanted
forward to performing again at People's Voice Cafe.
yes.
It's been quite a while. We've had one or two solo shows where we were featured. We're really looking forward to perhaps having another opportunity to come back on our own and present one of our programs for you.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person. I look forward to hearing you, and thank you for being with us today, Bennett. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You're welcome. Thank you. Now to one of my clients.
Okay. So, Helene, you were in the middle of
yes.
saying a little bit more about yourself.
Right, a little history. So there I was at City College, kind of a classical music nerd, and getting involved with all the folk singers around with lots of big guitars, and I had a little old ukulele, and it's ridiculous. So I got involved with all of the ideas of the social consciousness stuff. And when I met Leonard, as he put it, he brought out my inner anarchist. And I came to be interested in Martha Schlamme because so many people in my classical circle had taken classes with her. What they learned was how to get into a character, how to bring the character into bring their life into something that they were singing. And I was a drama major, as it turned out. I decided not to be a music major at City College, and so this was something that really spoke to me. But I'd never seen her perform. I'd never spoken to her. And in the early '80s, I was living in the Bronx, and she was appearing at a Y on what was it? Oh yeah, well. Point is that I went to see her. I was blown away also, and I was I went backstage to talk to her, and she was amazed that the people that she was singing to, older generation Jews, were upset that she was singing in German, which it seems to be a trope in the older Jewish society, that you don't want to hear anything German, much less learn about anything German, because Germany rejected them and killed them all. So, but she didn't quite understand that. In fact, this happened to me once when I had.
Let me say something about that, because Martha and Pete Seeger shared a German heritage and a determination to revive and revivify that German heritage and take it back from the Nazis that they felt had misappropriated, hijacked, and stolen it. And they took these early, like Bennett mentioned, Die Gedanken sind frei as a 19th century German freedom song, and they revivified it. They brought it back, and we sing it in our performances in Pete's version that Martha sang, and she sang other German songs as well. but mostly she sang a lot more Yiddish than German, although her Yiddish was kind of German tainted. There are three kinds of Yiddish, at least. There's the Galiciana, and there's the Litvak, which is my family, and Martha was kind of Deutschmarsch. It was very close to German, because she grew up in Vienna. But her Yiddish is very pure and beautiful and operatic, and she was really on the border between musical theater, opera, pop song, folk song. She covered all of those bases, and she was just an amazing force of nature, which Helene appreciated even in the one performance she saw, and I appreciated over a period of 20 years that when I first saw her, and then the last few years of her life. I went to see her a couple of times.
I'm going to ask Belle to get her video and her sound, and she should be joining us. There she is, Belinda Halpern.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. Nice to be here with you, Chris. And
thanks for joining
Leonard.
us. Leonard and Helene will come back and join us shortly, but I wanted to get an opportunity to talk to you directly and individually,
Sure.
And get your connection to Martha. But before you talk about Martha specifically, tell us about you and what you do in your life.
Sure. Well, I could start a little with Martha and come back to me. So I met Martha when I was 14 years old, and I had the incredible opportunity to study with her from age 14 till she died in 1985. And she was a really formative part of my life, and a lot of what I do relates to her. So I sing the Kurt Weill and Jacques Brel and the material that she introduced me to. I also teach what she taught me. So I teach in Italy in the summers at a program called the TuscanyProject.com, and people come to Italy to study how do you tell a story with a song, how do you connect to an audience. That Martha was so good at teaching, and I really wanted to take her legacy forward. And then third, her sort of social justice ethos that was so much part of her concerts, I've also taken forward. So I'm in a quartet that's called What the World Needs Now, an interfaith singers coalition. And we are an interracial group that does mostly social justice events, marches. We bring people together in different towns around Boston, trying to help bring love and hope in this time and get people to vote also. So that's it.
If I may interject for a second. So you're Boston based or Boston area based. Okay. And you're going to be performing at the People's Voice Cafe with Leonard and Helene and Bennett and his group, which is fantastic. But I want to raise one other group for you. Are you familiar with the People's Music Network? Have you heard of the People's Music Network?
Yes, I have.
Okay, because there's a large contingent out of Boston, and if you haven't connected with them, it sounds like you and your quartet are a great match for them.
I think we are. I think we're connected with them. I haven't yet, but I think our quartet is. I think I heard about it. Thank you.
Okay. So tell me more about you and Martha and your work.
Yes. Well, I was thinking about the first time I met her. Well, first, I'll two quick things. The first place I saw her was at the Ballroom in Manhattan when I was 14. My parents brought me there. And it was just amazing because she created a community in the audience that we all came together. And she really touched all of our hearts through telling her story and connecting to the stories in our hearts. And we all sang, and it was like this almost sacred experience to be in this concert. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do with my life. And
tell a little bit about her story.
Well, Martha told the story of parts of her life, which were leaving Austria, escaping Austria in 1938 as a teenager, first being sent to England and being sent to foster parents. And then her family, thank God, got out of Austria and were interned on the Isle of Man off of England with other Austrians. And in fact, in the beginning, it was the Nazis and the Jews together being interned on this island. And then the British realized they should separate them. And Martha, as a young teenager, heard this Swedish singer or Danish singer, Engel Lund, who gave Martha the idea of singing songs from around the world and bringing people together, because she was very moved by how that singer brought people together in the camps. And so Martha, when she came to this country in 1947, she really started with that folk music and songs from around the world and her Yiddish and German heritage. And then she gradually met Uta Hagen, who was an amazing acting teacher and actress. And Martha's methodology was really taking Uta's work and applying it to songs. And
There's a
that,
small world situation. My brother's an actor, and he studied with Uta Hagen and was a good friend of hers for many
oh,
years.
wow.
Ding, small world, love it. Go ahead, go ahead.
So I was going to say that, I actually met Martha after that concert by going to her class. I lied and said I was 17 to get into her class. And I get there and, everyone had to sing a song and then she would coach us. And I sang Teach Me Tonight at 14, which if you know, did you say I got a lot to learn? Don't think I'm trying not to learn, since this is the perfect spot to learn. Teach me tonight, right? So you can imagine this 14-year-old singing the song. And then Martha says to me in front of all these other people who are like in their 20s or 30s, so what is the scene you're thinking of? Who are you singing to? What is about to happen? In my quick thinking young mind, I said, well, maybe I'm a Hasidic girl on her wedding night.
Oh boy.
The entire class just erupted in laughter. It was just like, they thought it was hysterical.
So do I.
So it's a great song for a Hasidic girl to sing on her wedding night. Martha was just, totally lovely and generous with me and willing to teach me at the level I was at. And then she was almost like a second mother to me. So I got to really get to know her. And I was so inspired by her artistry, by her fighting for injustice, and also by her amazing generosity of spirit. Anybody who called Martha, she'd call them back. She would, if people needed something, she'd be there. And anyone who needed a benefit, needed her in a cause she believed in, she would make it happen. And she was also very on the front lines of the anti-McCarthy movement. So she refused to renounce Paul Robeson, whom she sang with when she was in her citizenship interviews. And then she refused to renounce Pete Seeger and had to move record labels from Folkways. She also was, I believe, the first artist who the ANC got to boycott South Africa. So
wow.
She just had a lot in her of doing what she believed in, bringing that forward. And as Helene and Leonard said, she was always astonished that the rest of the world wasn't like that too. Why weren't we all taking action on behalf of those who were oppressed? And why weren't we all as caring as she was? So she was an incredible example to me.
That's great. Now, before I bring Leonard and Helene back in so we can all talk together, what was, if you could identify one or maybe two, your favorite Martha Schlamme renditions or songs? Any come to mind?
Oh boy, we're going to hear a couple that she's going to sing on video that were kind of two of her signature songs. One of them was Surabaya Johnny. She just created a scene in that song. You saw who she was singing to. You saw the journey from the emotional beginning to in the beginning there was hope, and by the end it was dashed. And you saw a woman losing the love of her life in this song. She was just amazing. It was like an opera in a scene. And then opposite, Pirate Jenny, this fierce coming back as the oppressed and saying, we will not accept this. This is what I'm going to do to you. And she embodied both those incredible vulnerability and incredible strength and anger. And oh my God, I hadn't seen somebody do all that when I started watching her. And I remember those two songs from, I think, that first concert, and that remained all the way through.
All right, we've been rejoined by Leonard and Helene. And so you guys are all on screen together right now. And I have to say this, you may or may not know this, but my mother was Jewish. She was born in Brooklyn, but her family was from one of the regions in Eastern Europe that went back and forth between Poland and Hungary. I think it was part of Galicia, but I'm not sure.
What's her name?
Her name was Ethel Werfel. She had two brothers, Abe Werfel and Lou Werfel, who became a rabbi, was killed in World War II. And the bottom line is, my mom was a red. She was a rebel. She was all into Pete Seeger, Paul Robeson, etc. We listened to that when we were kids. But I never heard the name Martha Schlamme until I met you. I never heard any of her singing until I met you guys. And so I started listening to the recordings. I'm like, oh my God, this woman has an incredible voice. She definitely knows how to tell a story, even though I didn't understand any of it because all the stuff I was listening to was in German. But that's okay. I loved it. And so my first question to all of you is, why is she not better known in broader circles? What's stopping us at this point in history? I understand what might have been stopping us in the 60s, but what's stopping us now from knowing more about her?
Well, there aren't enough
Maybe
people.
that
There
it
aren't
may
enough people
be
like you that want to learn about her. You know, we it's out there. You know, and this concert is we've actually this is the sixth of six concerts that we've done this year honoring her. Steve Blyer and New York Festival of Song has occasionally done things that have honored her. Not enough. I mean, we do as much as we can, and you're helping us, and we appreciate that a lot. But the People's Music Network should be doing something for her, and essentially they are, because we got in touch with you in a way through them. I've been working with the People's Music Network since 1989, when I conducted the Metropolitan Philharmonic Chorus on January 15th, 1989, at the Harlem School of the Arts. It was Dr. King's 60th birthday, Ellie Siegmeister's 80th birthday, and we did his cantata "I Have a Dream," inspired by the March on Washington, which I attended with my father, by the way. I was there. And I came back and told Ellie about it. He was commissioned by a synagogue to write the thing. And we did the Manhattan premiere on his 80th birthday. Pete Seeger was there. And he came up and said, "Have you heard of the People's Music Network, Songs of Freedom and Struggle? You have to join. And I want you to bring Ellie Siegmeister up to Beacon to do a workshop on the Composers Collective," which was founded by my father. What's his name? Help me. Charles, yes, Charles Seeger was Pete's father. I met him; he was a very old man, and when I met him at Cornell, but he was brilliant. And Charles Seeger founded the Composers Collective along with Mark Blitzstein. Actually, with Ellie Siegmeister, who brought Mark Blitzstein into it. And it was the Composers Collective of the 1930s was an amazing group, and we did a whole workshop with Pete on that, which is was broadcast on WBAI. As a matter of fact, I had a program called Music of All the Americas, but which they threw out after a year, saying it was too European.
So Leonard, Helene, you were going to say something?
Unmute, dear.
Oh yeah, sure.
I think I don't remember what I was going to say. That was a long time ago. No, it must have something to do with the era that she was making recordings and singing and singing in concerts, and that is that people want you to be mainstream. Leonard and I have had that problem a lot. Your songs are in mainstream. Who could? So I think this is part of the problem, that you need tremendous outside support in order to be well known, and and word of mouth has a lot to do with this also. The circles that she was being talked about in were the student circles of people who wanted to learn more about performing themselves. So she was. I think her influence was very, very strongly as a teacher. And you get many more strong performances out of the people who studied with her and understand how it is to bring a character into and life into a song that you're doing, just instead of just thinking of the notes on the page. We had an interesting conversation with somebody who said that he was an actor, but Martha criticized his singing because he performed more as a singer than an actor. He wasn't
This is
getting
the conversation we had last night with Frank Farrell, whom we've been trying to reach for months, and who did some videos with Martha in Skokie, Illinois, in 1983, which are on YouTube. Okay. And Frank is going to be at our concert. We finally made contact with him last night.
Let Helene finish so I can get to Bell. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. He always picks up when I take a breath, and he picks up and finishes a thought, and then he runs with it. And I'm sorry, I can't come back.
All right,
I
Belle?
can continue. Yeah. It just made me think of something, Helene, that's funny that Martha used to say, slightly off color, but she would say, please don't masturbate the voice. She felt
Oh.
like
Now, what did she mean by that? No.
she felt like if people were over singing and not really meaning the words and just listening, she said, don't listen to your voice. Really, you should be about making the story come alive, and your voice is a tool. Your voice is not front and center.
Yeah.
Your
Well,
emotion,
I
your
want to
life.
mention two songs of hers that we're doing that have taken on incredible contemporary resonance today because of what's going on in Israel and what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. One of them is a song that Belle knocked them dead with in March, which we're going to watch Martha sing herself on the video. It's called "Ach Johnny, I Hardly Knew You." It was written after the Civil War, and it's an incredible anti-war song that I remember she did in '61 and knocked me out. And the other song is from an album that she did called "Kissin's No Sin," and this is a piece called "The Cruel War." A cruel war is raging, and this is a song that she sang, and it became uh, adapted for during the Vietnam War. If you remember, Joan Baez. I was there when Joan Baez said, "It's time for girls to say yes to boys who say no to the draft," and that's what this song is about: a girl who's saying yes to a boy as long as he'll say no to the draft. And that's what we need today in Russia and in Israel. And we're getting and so we've revived this song thinking about Martha and thinking about how incredibly contemporary and timely it is for us today.
Belle?
I was just thinking also about your question, why she's not more famous today. And I think part of it was she crossed so many lines. She wasn't in a niche that was just one thing. And today people get, if you're just in one niche, you can get more famous. But she was really famous in the 60s as a folk singer. And then when she transitioned to both acting and to the cabaret world, I think, there was less room. And she also was very much a cabaret singer. And when I think of cabaret, it's in a small club where the entire audience becomes one and you're really singing to each person. But cabaret is by nature for like 100 people, or fewer. So it's a small.
It's intimate. It's intimate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
right.
so it's almost a different medium in many ways. And so, I mean, I know people that love to go to cabaret style presentations all the time. That's what they only like. They won't go to arena concerts or big venues. They just want that small, because they want that connection to the
Right.
performer. And it sounds like Martha was a master, or I don't want to say master, a commanding presence when it came to connecting with audiences. And now, Belle, I have to ask you one other question, and please forgive me for being rude, but I love the way you said that you started studying with her at the age of 14 until she died in 1985. So I assume you were 16 when she died? No, I am curious to know, 1 second later, I am curious to know approximately how long you studied with her.
10 years. So I was 24 when she died.
10 years. Wow, that's a long time to study
And,
with one teacher. That's great.
right. And I have other teachers too, but she was the through line, and she's really been a through line in my life. And I want to also just add to what I think Leonard was starting to say about Martha and Helene too, as a teacher. So I do think her influence is felt. And when I studied with her on 103rd Street in West End, and in her building lived Judy Collins. And I interviewed Judy Collins and Pete Seeger and many others for a radio show I made about her for WBEI. And they were all talking about how central she was in their lives as a teacher and how much she gave them around how to interpret a song and how to make it come alive and be real and authentic. And I think that's a lot. And opera singers really learned that from her. And there was
Tara Hazan, for example. Yeah.
Yes. And there was a scholarship in her memory at Circle in the Square Theater School. So a lot of people she taught there. She was just a known quantity as an incredibly loving and forceful teacher.
Cool. Helene, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that when she passed away, there was an obituary that said there were no survivors. And Bill, were you involved in getting a bunch of people together to say, we are the survivors?
We are her survivors, yes.
Yeah, that was very moving.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember any of this. And I feel like I have a big gap in my cultural life for not having known more about this person and not having had the possibly had the opportunity to see her and see her live and meet her myself.
Chris, it's uncanny now when we watch the videos of Martha, which were made at the last years of her life. We see her at the age that Belle is now. And we think of Belle as so young, so much younger than we, and now we have to think of Martha as so much younger than we because we're seeing her. I mean, she
Sure.
only lived to the age of 62, and even toward the end, she looked in the mirror and said, "I see an old woman," but she never became an old woman. She died on stage, or that is to say, she passed out on stage performing one of the pieces that Helene is going to perform, I Am Easily Assimilated from Candide by Leonard Bernstein, which was kind of a signature tune for her because it's all about, I never learned a human language.
Right.
My father spoke a High Middle Polish, which of course is Mittelhochdeutsch, that's Yiddish. She sang that and she passed out on stage in Chautauqua and never recovered from that coma.
Helene?
I keep thinking that he's cursing me when he keeps telling that story.
No. You're keeping her alive. You're reviving her.
Yes.
But Belle,
and I want to remind us again, as Chris said, we are going to be making these songs come alive on September 23rd at the People's Voice Cafe. And you're going to hear both Helene and me and also Leonard singing the songs and bringing them forward. And also we'll get to see some video of Martha.
Right. Those will be at the People's Voice Cafe. Those will be a broadcast there. Our online audiences will not get to see them, unfortunately, but they should watch every other YouTube video that's out there. Martha. In fact, I just got
they'll get to see us. They'll get to see us online.
And they get to see you, right? That's true, exactly. And they'll get to see this interview, which is very important too. Helene, did you want to say something else?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Belle, anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I was thinking about some other songs that we're singing and why. And there's one song, Sur la Place, which is a Jacques Brel song about a young girl in the square who is singing and dancing her heart out, and the people shut their shutters and won't listen. And Stephen Blyer, who is one of Martha's accompanists who worked with her the most with both the Kurt Weill show and other shows, Stephen said that they worked on that song for like 12 years. But she never sang it. And we were thinking about why she never sang it. And he said, it was just too close to her heart. She was a woman, a girl in Austria, pushed out of Austria. And even in this country, she was somebody who was so idealistic and so believed that the world could be a better place and art could make the world a better place. And there's a group of people in the world then and now who are shutting their shutters and not letting that light in, not letting new ideas and possibilities and hope.
Refusing to be woke.
So here's a question for you.
Well, wait, Chris. Before we go on, I want to say something about that number that Belle is doing.
Go ahead.
It's an incredibly strong piece. And the story that Steve Blyer tells us that after working on it first in French and then in English and then back in French, she turned to him and said, "Stevie, what is this song about?" and she just, it's not that she couldn't relate to it. My Belle says she probably related to it too strongly. She couldn't bear the idea of being shut out and shut up. And Helene, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking about that also. It's not just a personal song. It's a song about the Jewish people. And in those days, the Jewish people were trying to immigrate, and nobody wanted them. Everybody was shutting their doors. So it's literally about the Jewish people, and that's why it was so close to her.
I don't think Jacques Brel was thinking of the Jewish people, but he could have been.
I don't think so. I agree with you. Jacques Brel does a lot of things that's out of his head, and strong emotion whenever he wrote.
I labored over a translation of that, a singing translation of it, which is yet to be performed and will be, I hope, someday. Belle is singing it in the original French, but we're going to put the English in the program. And in fact, when she sang it in New Jersey, when I put it on the video, the subtitles have the English translation, so people can understand what she's saying, what she's singing. It's a very, very beautiful song. Martha did a whole bunch of Jacques Brel songs, Carousel and The Sons of, and If We Only Have Love. Jacques Brel was a favorite not only of Mother Schlamme, but of Gisela May, whom we knew in Berlin. Gisela May was kind of the successor to Lotte Lenya. She was the chanteuse of the Berliner Ensemble. And Helene and I performed for her in 1989 in East Berlin, and she said, "Leonard, du bist ein richtiger Entertainer. Du musst in mein Fernsehprogramm." She was going to put us in her television program when we came back in 1990, but by that time the wall came down. And she was thrown out of everything. She didn't have a television show at all. Years later, we saw her again, and what was she singing? Jacques Brel in German.
Of course. So let me ask you this question, because it's just sort of hit me. And you know, Helene, you made the comment about the push to be mainstream. And then we talk about the fact that obviously Martha's life was totally framed by the fact that she was expelled from her homeland. And I just said to myself, when I was a kid,
it's not quite true. She wasn't expelled. She fled.
Well, yeah, because she had to. All right, so
yeah.
One grape, 2 strawberries, whatever. Okay, I got you. You're right. She fled. But that actually ties in with my next point. When the movie The Sound of Music came out, which was it was 67, I guess it was. I was 8. It was my first dialogue with my parents about real dialogue about what had happened in Europe. Why did the Von Trapp family have to leave? Right. And ironically enough, and I won't get into the long story, but it was my discussion with my mother about this movie that led me to look up the first person I ever looked up in the World Book Encyclopedia that I had just received, and that was Adolf Hitler, because I couldn't understand what kind of person would create all this kind of vicious chaos. And so, but to get back to the mainstream point, The Sound of Music in many ways was a mainstream telling of the whole story, or only part of the story, actually, the beginning piece of the story of what was really happening, because at that time, even many Americans did not fully understand and acknowledge what had happened in Europe because of the Nazis. So, and that became incredibly popular. It was incredibly cool to say the Nazis were bad, and they expelled this cute family, blah 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 blah, and then you have these millions of other stories of murder and mayhem and loss and expulsion and exile, and they get treated very differently in popular culture. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I want to say something. I was living in Europe, working from 79 to 86, and I saw the change happen in 79 during the television series Holocaust, which had a strong impact in America, but you have no idea what a strong impact it had on Germans. Young Germans were hearing about this for the first time, and they were going to their parents and saying, "How could this have happened? Where were you during the war? What did you do? And why didn't you tell me until now?" This was happening, and the Germans have a word for it, which no other language has. It's called Vergangenheitsbewältigung, and it means coming to terms with mastering the past. And that's what the young Germans, the new generation, determined to do. Nie wieder Krieg, never again war, and Vergangenheitsbewältigung, coming to terms with the past. And that's what Martha was trying to get before this. Actually, during that period, I mean, 79 is when it started, and she lived until 85. Yes, Lene.
Don't we have that today here with the problem of this president who was elected who revered Hitler and all the other dictators in the world? This is a big problem.
Yes, it's the bitch that bore him is in heat again, says Arturo, the narrator in Brecht's Arturo Ui, and that's where we are right now.
Bill?
Well, I was just thinking about history repeating itself and the dangers of that. And also, my son was just in Berlin for the summer, and he felt very much what Leonard is just saying, that there really is in it. And he felt the difference. He actually was in Berlin, and then he visited Vienna. And he felt in Berlin, as a Jew, that he felt very okay and very understood, and that they had really done a lot of work on their past. And you can see it, of course, in the landscape of Berlin with all the bricks in the ground. But then when he went to Vienna, he could feel anti-Semitism, and it was different, and they hadn't done as much of the work. So it's interesting that Martha came from Vienna, which has not had to do as much repair internally as Germany.
So the Austrians get away with saying we were all victims.
Right.
We were Hitler's first victims, and you see the films, and they welcomed Hitler. You know,
my mother.
To be fair, in the 80s, they did do some work on it. I don't want
to. My mother tells me a story of my father's African American, my mother's white Jewish, and they went to Europe in 1957, a year after they were married, and of course it was 1957. It wasn't that long after the war. And they're traveling through Europe. And of course, all the Europeans assume that my father's African because they can't believe that a Black American is married to a white American woman. So they just assume it's an international couple. And they get to Salzburg in Austria. And of course, my mother's worshiping Salzburg because Mozart is her favorite composer. And she's like, oh. And they go into a little candy shop and they're having a conversation with the owner, who's an older woman. And my mother says, so how have things been, since the war, are things, getting better. And the woman says, oh, yes, they're so much better now than they were, but they're still not as good as the day Hitler came in. And my mother's like, okay, time to leave. It's like,
yeah. Well, Chris, you know that the little pastry that we call in America a black and white. You know what they call it in Germany? Americana. That's what it's called. Yeah. Well,
and
a Berliner is a donut. I mean, when John F. Kennedy said "Ich bin ein Berliner," he was really saying "I am one donut." Idiomatically, it would have been "Ich bin Berliner," but he said "Ich bin ein Berliner," which is one donut. But no. Austria is really quite incredible in their. They don't feel that they need Vergangenheitsbewältigung. We had a friend named Gerhard Bronner. In fact, my last correspondence with Martha, I was writing to her about him. He was sort of like the Viennese Tom Lehrer, except Tom Lehrer wrote about 68 songs. He wrote over 3,000. And he also wrote translations of all the major musicals. And he translated a piece of mine called "Every Boy Should Have a Jewish Mother." And I translated a lot of his things. And I was trying to interest Martha and Ellie Stone in doing something like Jacques Brel is alive and well, living in Paris, with Gerhard Bronner. Gerhard Bronner was alive and well and living in Vienna, but actually he left Vienna twice. He left in 1938, same time Martha did. He went to Palestine. He went to his house, and he fought with the Irgun for the independence of Israel. Then he came back to Vienna after the war, and then in the 1990s there was a raft of anti-Semitism going on. Waldheim was the
Prime Minister.
No. He was the General Assembly president.
UN
and it was revealed that he had been a Nazi. They used to say there's Alzheimer's where you forget everything, and then there's Waldheimers where you just forget that you were Nazi. So Bronner was attacking Waldheim, and people started attacking him. In fact, they went after him and told him that claimed that he owed $300,000 in taxes, and he fled the country a second time for anti-Semitism. He came to Florida. And he was there for several years, and we had the pleasure of his company many times. And he wrote a song for us called "A Song to Begin," which we usually begin our concerts with. And then he went back to Vienna. But the conundrum of the Viennese is still, well, yes. I want to tell you one other thing. I wrote a cantata called "Jewish Voices in Germany," which was done in German in Berlin and Dresden, and it was done here on Long Island in English. And when it was done in Dresden, we were thinking, this is 1985, we were going to do April 20th or April 21st. And I said, I think we were going to do April 21st, not April 20th, because that's, and the woman said to me, I said, that's the birthday of, and she said, oh, you mean that Austrian?
I was thinking of a different holiday from 420, but that's a whole other story. So, all right, we have to close this out. Belle, is there anything else you wanted to say, or Helene?
Two things. I want to just really remind us how important Martha was in the world, and hope that you will come and hear our concert on September 23rd at the People's Voice Cafe. and that
I'll be there.
everything she did, that her belief that the world could be a better place is something we're trying to bring forward in this concert, and also in my music. If you want to, on Facebook, you can find What the World Needs Now and Interfaith Singers Coalition.
And do you have a web page of your own?
It's on Facebook. That's where we are.
Just on Facebook.
Just on Facebook.
No website.
I do have a web page, but it's for my nonprofit work doing teaching leadership in schools, different work.
I see. Okay. Well, we'll have to get your musical website at some point. So,
Yeah.
Helene, any final words from you?
I piggyback on Leonard, so I'm wherever Leonard is.
Interestingly enough, I have a Wikipedia page thanks to Helene, but I tried to get her a Wikipedia page. They wouldn't accept it, at least not in English. The German Wikipedia has Helene Williams. You can read about her in German, or you can see her read about her on our page.
Do come to the People's Voice Cafe. It's open to everybody. No one is turned away.
That's right.
And yeah,
and
it's going to be
also
fun. It's going to be wonderful and fun, and you will rise out of your seat and cheer for us.
Sing with us, hopefully by the end.
Yes.
And sing along with us when we sing "Everybody Loves Saturday Night" in 6 languages.
That's right.
And we're as for our website, my website is ljlerman.artists-in-residence.com, and we have over 4,000 videos up, including all 5 of our concerts devoted to Martha Schlamme so far. That 6th one will also be up once it's done.
You said 4,000 videos?
That's right.
Okay, I just want to make sure the audience got that. 4,000 videos.
We have over 4,000 videos and over 1 million views. I mean, it's not that many events, because many events have as many as 20 or 30 different.
I see. Okay.
So it's not 4,000 concerts. Helene and I have done 700 performances together.
That's it. Look, that's impressive enough.
Incredible.
All right, guys. Thank you all so very much. This has been a pleasure. I look forward to meeting you all in person in a few weeks. See you at the People's Voice Cafe. If it's Saturday night, it's the People's Voice Cafe. Have a wonderful day, everybody.